Let's start with Elaine. Elaine, tell me your point of view of your courtship.
Okay, we went on a double date. He went with, was it Shirley?
Shirley.
He went with my roommate, I went with his roommate. And so we went to this place in Provo, had a big lighthouse. I can't remember what the place was called. And we sat there, and he and I were conversing more, and Jim and Shirley were. So we decided at the end of the day, or the next morning, that we should be dating the opposite, which we did. And as time went on, we had a lot of fun together. We would, go out with, other double dates, and he had noticed me when I was at that dance.
Oh, we're on the Steelworkers Union Hall.
It was a place where BYU had banned some dances our first year. Okay, well, I guess this was my second year. And so Steelworker, it was a great big hall, and they didn't care what kind of dancing you did. Well, I was going with the keyboard person before, kind of in between this, but so we did it was called the stomp, and you were not allowed to do the stomp, and you weren't allowed to do this dance, and you basically could do ballroom dancing. And so that's where we met, even though I was dating and then we had done the double date after that with Jim and Shirley.
Yeah.
And so then we just started dating. I'd go to his baseball games, and we'd walk around campus. Everybody knew who we were. And I thought what was neat was that he knew more people than I did because he was popular on the campus. So I thought, this is kind of cool. And anyway, then finally came down where I went and picked out a ring. I knew it was coming, so I went to Bullocks and Losey. Everybody did in Provo. That's where I just went. And Mrs. Losey was really pushing this one ring, and I didn't like it. I just didn't like it. I picked a different ring. So when he went over, Mrs. Losey talked him into one of those rings, and that's the ring that he got for me. And you notice I don't wear a ring. Anyway, so we decided the best place for him to ask me to marry him was to go to the baseball diamond on the pitcher's mound. Well, it was dark. And so then we went up at the Richards building. They had stairs, or they were bleachers. And so I opened up the ring, and I said to him, "This isn't the ring I picked out." But like a good person, I went ahead, I wore the ring, and then one day I just said, "I just want a gold band." So I went down and I picked out my gold band, probably, and paid for it myself, and I was very happy with it. And then when Jill and Scott were getting married, Scott says, he was a poor student, and he says, I need to give Jill something. And I said, I got the perfect ring. So I gave him the ring. They just wanted the diamond out of it. Or there were two little diamonds in it. So Jill wears my diamonds, and I'm just so happy for her. But then we were separated that summer because he went to play in Quad Cities. So we got married at the very end of the season, pretty much. And then he went back, and he says, "Well, I'm going to be gone the next 2 weeks." "Oh, where am I going to stay?" "Well, you're going to stay with Pam McCall." And I didn't even know her. and she was from Grenville, like Crick, Grenville, South Carolina. And I introduced her to tacos, and she introduced me to grits. And we had a real good relationship, and we took the guys down and dropped them off where they were getting the bus. And as the bus was driving down the street, I realized, or they're all yelling at me, all the guys. Pam and I was driving, Pam and I were on a one-way street going the wrong way. This is in Iowa. You know, we don't know the rules. But we just remember all the ball players going. And we came, and I found a driveway, and I turned real quick. So, but that was the courtship period.
Wonderful. Did you have something?
One thing I think she forgot, Shirley had a sister named Ann who was also up at BYU, and Ann knew about the ring, so she went with me to Bullock and Losey.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, she went with me, and she said, "This is the ring." I said, "Are you sure this is the ring that she wanted?" "Oh yes, perfect." And that's the ring that was wrong.
You're telling me 60 plus years later.
No, I told you a long time ago.
Well, I must not have liked the story.
Darn it, Ann. Darn it.
But that's what it was. I said, "Be positive. I don't want to make a mistake here."
Anne didn't even go with me. She didn't
She
even
did.
know what.
She did.
Oh, she did.
Yeah, she did. And
See, I
said,
don't remember things.
And I said, "Okay." That's how we got the ring.
Well, tell me about the wedding.
Okay, we were. Oh gosh. Because he wasn't a member, I chose to be married in my parents' home, and just for family and close friends. And then we would have a big reception afterwards at night in my parents' backyard. And his family flew in, and that's when we could really only do LAX. They didn't have Burbank running that well. But anyway, so his family came. They stayed at a hotel out by LAX, and Bob and my brother went and picked up the family, and they were sitting around watching TV, right? You know, so finally they got everybody in the car, and it was just one disaster after another. And I don't remember what my feelings were at the time, but if I did remember, they weren't very kind. But the ceremony went off very well. My brother stood as best man until the whole family got there, and but I don't remember much more. It's probably the first nightmare I had.
Well, I remember wedding was supposed to go at a certain time, and they were late, and we kept waiting it off. Finally, I was just getting ready to say, "Let's go get married." They're not here. They're not here. That time, my dad had a stroke before, and he was in a wheelchair. And I remember my mother saying that. I said, "Nobody's going to make fun of my dad." That he's
right.
in a wheelchair. But I said, "You guys, you're late." And I would get getting ready to say, "Let's go on with this ceremony. And if they're not here, they're not here." And basically, that was it. Then finally, we ended up getting married. And then I know that her parents had a den. And I remember Elaine and I went in there just to be alone. We were eating, cake and stuff. I know my mother wasn't happy about that, and really, my mother didn't really like Elaine, and she wanted me to marry some kind of Italian girl, heavy and all this kind of stuff. I said, "I don't want to marry an Italian girl. This is one I want to marry." And then we got married. And really, my mother, not my dad, but my mother and my brother said, didn't treat her right. You know, they just didn't. And so I know she said, that's it. We're not going to deal with it. So, you know, if I couldn't make it home for Thanksgiving or because our car broke down or whatever, my mother would just go off on a tangent. And so that's, you know, but I married the one I wanted to marry. And I've never regretted it. Never. So.
Sometimes you've thought, well. You know, I have to get back to one of the questions that you asked him. And I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh gosh, now I forgot it again. But, that I push you in certain ways. And we have this kind of a friendship where we go back and forth on something. Older couples do that. You know, somebody will ask a question like you did, and I would probably jump in and correct him on it. But he always says, why do you always correct me? And I said, because I want you to know the whole story. But he does that on purpose, just because he knows I'm going to correct him. So, and that's gone on for years and years and years. And I also tell him that he wasn't raised by Beth Johnston, who was my mother, that everything had to be in a certain order. He skips order around. And sometimes I think he does it on purpose, just so I can get the story right. So, but that's something, because we're together more now than we ever have been. And it's just kind of funny that we can still make fun of each other. No, you didn't hear it that way.
Anne wasn't at the rings.
Oh, yeah. Good old Anne.